This terracotta pot has been in the ground for just over a year, and I clearly know what happened above ground in this garden bed, but now it's time to see what happened below. This is a GrowOya. If you're not familiar with these, here's a brief overview along with one of the most surprising things that I discovered while using these this last year. An Oya is a porous clay irrigation vessel, basically a terracotta pot that you place in the garden and refill with water. The roots of the plants that you place around the Oya will gravitate towards it, getting the water as soon as it's needed. The neat part about this system is that Oyas can support so many different plants with different watering needs. For example, the radishes are right on top of the bulb of the vessel, knowing their taproot needs the water right below it. I'm planting everything else around them: tomatoes, shishito peppers, eggplant, and roselle hibiscus, and then placing more drought-resistant plants around those. Rosemary and lavender, lemongrass. Here, oh, check this out. The Itoy onions are coming up, and way far over here in between these two Oyas, I'll turn it here a little bit, I've got basil started. So those are more drought resistant, and you can see the varying degrees as they go away from the Oya. That's really something to consider when you are interplanting inside of a bed and when you're choosing which kind of a system that you want to start with. What is really neat about this system is how little water you use with an Oya. Right behind me is a great comparison of what you can expect from this system versus something else. Here are the two beds that we are going to compare. This half moon shape was powered by Oyas, and this rectangle is from the garden grids. This is two 4x6 garden grids that are together with a manifold. And what you see right here is 40 square feet, and that's 48. And don't worry about the math, I will add it all up. It is really awesome at the end. But I would really compare this smaller section, because I will say I didn't fully fill up every last little piece. I'm working on that right now. So I would compare what was serviced to be kind of closer to just one half of this. I put a large and then two medium Oyas on either side. A large is 1.7 gallons, a medium is 0.8, and that totals up with 3.3 gallons. Over here, this, I measured all of the activity I was doing over the summer, and every single time I ran the grids in the morning, it was 5 minutes. 2 minutes on, 2 minutes off. But for a total of, it ended up being watering at 5 minutes. And this whole section was 20 gallons. 10 gallons for that one small section that we will compare against the 3.3 gallons. So 3.3, 10. It's very close to that 70%. It does not say that on the box, but it does on the website. 70% less water usage. That's crazy. Crazy to think that without even trying to hit a number that is advertised on the website, I actually got pretty close. We had 110 degrees for almost, it was over 30 days. And so I was watering every single day, 5 minutes a day, refilling the Oyas. And I realized I didn't actually refill the Oyas all the way because they still had water in them, but they certainly needed to be refilled every day. But when you do the math on that, that means it's actually more than a 70% reduction in water because I was using less. That was really neat to see that things were thriving in this environment, in that heat. That's without knowing the number that I was really comparing against. Now, if you ask me what that really was, I don't know, because you can't really tell how much water is in there, and I wasn't measuring at the time, but I might consider doing that this year. Now, to be clear, I love both systems, and there are reasons that you would want to use one or another. But from a water conservation standpoint, the Oyas are the clear winner. And there are other systems that use much more water than my beloved garden grids. The even better part is that water transfer works both ways. Shortly after we buried our Oyas in the front yard, it rained. Sure enough, when I opened the lid the next morning, there was condensation on the lid and water inside. If it rains where you are, the Oyas will actually act as a reservoir, saving you even more water. Now let's see what happened underground. Check out this root mat. This is the network of pumpkin, okra, roselle hibiscus, and whatever else I planted around this spot. I had to dig a little bit to find it because when I pulled the Oya out, the dirt above caved in on it. So if you don't find one around yours after you've used it for a growing season, keep digging. This is neat. It makes sense. The network of roots is larger around the bottom because the water level is always dropping and the roots go where water is present most often. As I go up, the root mat gets thinner and there really wasn't any on the top half of the Oya. Maybe there would have been in the summer when I was filling it more often, but not now. More on that in a minute. I have two thoughts about this. The first one is, do I really need to remove the Oyas? When a plant dies, the roots of the plant that died or got removed, those will compost back, and whatever you plant around the Oya, those will enjoy that compost and create a new mat, or it'll be more like a ongoing mat. So do I really need to take the Oya out? And that is for a special reason. Here in the low desert of Arizona, we grow year-round. Now, if you live further north, where it does actually freeze, you'd absolutely have to take it out because this is a terracotta pot and it absorbs water. So if you have water inside of the pot itself, and I'm not just talking about on the inside, but the porous material, we all know that when water freezes, it expands and that could cause this to crack. That would be terrible. Second, planning to remove an Oya is really important if you're planning on planting something long term. Let me show you. Over here, I have rosemary, and back over here, I have lavender. And what I don't want to do is ever disturb the roots so that they get really upset. These will grow for years. So if, or pretty much when I remove an Oya, I want it to be far away enough, well outside of the range of what will come out of the ground. Just to be clear, I realize that some roots will have wrapped its way around the Oya, but big area, it's not like I will be shaking the plant when I'm removing this pot. I always remember Charles Downing saying, roots are opportunistic, so I'm banking on that. But over here, you could see I am clearly violating that and trying out 6 different kinds of radishes around these small Oyas. Plants with the taproot like radishes and carrots are not the best kind of plant around Oyas, but I just wanted to try and see what would happen. And it was the only available space to see which radish we all like best. Now, I will admit that I am hand watering all of this area, doing some surface watering, as well as refilling the Oyas, making sure that the roots have something to grow towards. No matter what you do, you're going to have to do some surface watering to establish your seeds, your transplants, whichever you go with, just to make sure that they survive to make it to the Oyas. Something else to consider too. I've shared before that I love harvesting rainwater because the plants really do seem to just respond so much better. But I'm not doing that inside of the Oya because of the porous surface. I don't want anything to clog up that inside. If this applies to you, like we get a lot of rain in the winter so that you might not actually have to do too much of using the Oyas overwintering to reestablish the beds to get the roots to grow back to the Oyas, you'll need to start ramping up how often that you're filling them at the beginning of the summer. Technically, the instructions say remove and clean after a year or so, but this looks good to me. For the next experiment, I'm going to leave these in the ground for at least a couple years, maybe more, and see how well they do, and I'll let the plants tell me if they're struggling. Next up is the lack of weeds in the beds where I've used the Oyas. For the year I've had them, I've used Oyas in 2 in-ground beds. Now, admittedly, I use straw mulch as well, so any weeds have to work hard to find both water and sun. But by not surface watering as much, I've only seen a few very tenacious weeds in the beds. Those were mostly along the outside. This next point might start out sounding kind of silly, but it actually is not. It's very important. These lids are green, and that's where I started. I had my first set had green silicone lids. You can see they're now blue. This was a big deal for me when I considered this was truly, there's not a lot that you can say to give feedback on an Oya, but the color of the lid matters because when you have a lot of things growing, you cannot find the Oya in there. And actually, that's not a good example. The front bed where I had lots of overgrowth between roselle and the sweet potatoes. I couldn't find them. I knew where I planted my Oyas. I could not find them because they were green. I've got a better chance with this blue color right here. And these are silicone. A lot of things die out here in the desert. The UV, the heat, eats a lot of stuff. I've had a lot of different devices break on my house, but silicone is not one of them. Anything with EPDM or silicone is great. This is a really great, smart, long-term kind of lid. You don't have to worry about. It will, even though it's hard to find, and plants do cover it and protect it from the sun. But as you can see right here in this bed, there's nothing protecting these. So it's somewhat important to have some kind of lid that is going to last for a very long time, but also the fact that you can find it. If you have something brown, let's say a brown lid, once you have perhaps your dirt is that color or the straw mulch, it would blend in. So I really appreciate the blue. Not only that, my other YouTube channel is on water monitors and leak detection, so I appreciate blue for water. I'm pulling out my laptop here to do some real hardcore math because cost is a big deal when it comes to starting out a new bed. We've created a 2 by 12 foot Sho Sugeban bed here, and right now it's being serviced by 6 small Oyas. I'm working with GrowOya to see how well these Oyas do. If I wanted to use garden grids instead, I would need to order 2 by 6 foot grids, and that would be, each one of those is $75 a pop, and I would need a 12-inch, 9 or 12-inch manifold, and that's $19. So we're looking at $169 for that setup. Now compare this to the 6 small Oyas with my 10% discount code, that runs $188. It's pretty similar. It's within the realm. And I'm also not counting anything where you're tying this into an irrigation system or running a water hose, like buying a water hose, none of those things, because it'll be somewhat comparable. And from the irrigation, like putting this on a timer standpoint, I realized like at some point we will want to go on vacation in the summer. So we are going to figure out a way to automate this and really probably utilize this flexibility of this lid by allowing water to go in on a timer. But let's say this doesn't work out and I need to put in 2 medium Oyas in place of 2 of these smalls. Well, it's not like I need to reconfigure anything. All I need to do is pull out, replace, and I can put these small Oyas somewhere else. It's really nice because an Oya isn't limited to a certain size garden bed. I can use it in a container. I can use it to help something else that needs just a little bit more water, or I can give it as a gift, which I'll honestly say, like, this is my 3rd round of buying Oyas. I bought some last year to start out those 2 beds. I bought some more to kind of beef up what I had going on, that 40-foot bed. It just needed a little bit more coverage, so I added in 2 more larges. And honestly, the 3rd, I just bought to use a couple in some containers and truly to give them as gifts. That's not something you can do with just any kind of irrigation system. One of the reasons that I really like Oyas in containers is you can see this is beautiful ranunculus, but I didn't realize how sensitive it was to water, a lack thereof. Please excuse the change in audio because between my neighbor working on his truck and the storm rolling in, we've got a lot of wind happening, but this perfectly shows the problem was the ranunculus is super sensitive to drying out. It really needs a lot of water, at least a consistent amount of water. And when it died, I shouldn't say died, but when the heads dropped, dried out, and you could see it just really was terrible. And I had forgotten that I got used to the rain from the winter just leaving the soil a little wet, and I didn't really use the Oya as much as I should have. Now that I've got water, this is a much happier plant. I don't these heads I mean, they're still pretty, right? But I would have prevented this from happening had I used the Oya more than I did. And especially looking at the Snapdragon right here. This is an example where I didn't have a small Oya to go inside, and they're just pretty weak. The storm is starting to beat this up, so I need to hand water this versus having water in the Oya. This is really holding up well to the extra wind that we have right here in the last half hour. There are so many places to go from here. The first one being is like how to automate filling these Oyas up so that we can go on vacation and everything will not die when we're gone, as well as like how well will these do long term. These are some tiny pots, and this seems really aggressive for this big of a bed, but I'm excited to see if it actually works out because each small is 0.275 gallons. Like you're looking at a quart, just a little bit over that. That's crazy. So if you're interested in joining in on the experiment, I've got a discount code in the description. But if you're curious on things to consider when you're burying one of these and what it's like to unbox, you can check out this video right here. And I have no idea what I'm going to put down here in the future because there's a lot to explore with these. I hope you'll join me and I'll see you there.